Hi there, I'm Trisha Morris at Club Scrap, and I've got a really fun project for you today. It's called the Member Album, and Member has a period in front of each letter, which stands for Most Efficient Mini Book Ever Released. I thought it was kind of a fun name, and I went with it, but the Member Album is made with a piece of our amazing folding board. In this case, I used the craft folding board, and that provides the nice, firm, sturdy structure of the album. And I'm holding a version of the album created with the Golden Hour collection. Golden Hour. And once you open it, you have all of these wonderful surfaces that you can decorate and add pictures. So again, this was made with Golden Hour papers. I used a print from the card kit and a print from the page kit in this situation, and it just was so beautiful. I absolutely love this. And I've also made a second Member album with the Renewal Remix, and we've released this collection recently. And this one I used to help me remember a wonderful day spent in Amsterdam with some dear Club Scrap friends. There's me and my husband. And it was a cold, dreary, as you can see, a cold, rainy day in Amsterdam. I think many of them are. And but we still managed to have such a wonderful time. And I thought that this book really showcased some highlights of our day together. So what a fun way to just take a few selected pictures from an event and make a super special gift album out of it. For my next album, I'm going to be using the beautiful National Parks remix. But the beautiful thing about this Member album is that you can make it with any Club Scrap page kit. If you make this album with a special release page kit, you'll just have an extra few sheets of paper that you can use for another project. When you first look at the instructions, you'll notice that it says the materials include a page kit or two each of paper A, B, C, D, E, and F, and that E and F should be prints. So if you're using paper from your stash, that'll be something to pay attention to. Also, you'll need a yard of ribbon if you're not using one of our page kits, because most of our page kits come with at least a yard of something wonderful to use for a binding to hold the book together. You will also need the accordion pocket file. I have this planned out to really sort every component of the album as you trim and prepare the papers. If you do not have one of these, reach out to us and maybe we can help you get set up with one. Otherwise, make sure you have plenty of space and spread everything out into one of 4 piles. I'll go ahead and put this under my guillotine style trimmer base, which is what you will also need. If you don't have this Fiskars model of this trimmer, I can't recommend that enough. So to start, I took the instructions, I just followed along, paper A and so on, and I chose the papers I wanted to use in my book, A, B, C, D, and the E and the F for the prints. And I did make a recommendation for paper A being a dark color. So I've chosen 2 browns for papers A, because each one you need 2. And then for B, I chose this 2 craft colors. So that's B. For C, I used brick, and then D, I used green. And I needed another C, and then I just mixed it up and chose a different color for paper D, doesn't matter, D for doesn't matter, and then I needed 2 print E and 2 print F, plus you can use your cut-aparts that come in your page kits to help you decorate the book, so I'll trim all of these up, and then you will also need a piece of folding board. Now we carry this in craft and black. I used craft on this one, but you can see that not a lot of the folding board shows. It does definitely do something for it though. And in this case, I'm going to be using the black folding board just for a little more contrast. So you'll need at least 1 sheet of that, and you can find that at the shop at Club Scrap. Of course, our page kits come with all kinds of embellishments as well, so I have those set aside just in case you're wondering what I do with the rest of it. Just use as you wish to decorate your book. Now, I'm going to begin with 12 by 12 paper A in a dark color. The grain direction of the initial cut doesn't matter because this paper will not be folded. We'll trim at 11.5 and 5 3/4. Rotate, and we'll cut at 11.25, 10.5, and 5 1/4. Take these 2 rectangles that are the same and put them in pocket A, along with these 2 narrow strips, also pocket A. Then take the next piece, we'll trim again at 10.5 and 5 1/4. These 2 pieces should be the same size and also in pocket A. Now let me just tell you where we're headed. We just created the panels, that would be the slate color in this book, for the outside cover and the inside covers. And then this is a scrap. What I typically do is just keep all the scraps handy because we will possibly use them in the assembly of the book, and so they're not necessarily waste. It's just that there's not a specific roll for that one or that long skinny strip that fell off the end. Almost every paper is cut differently, so it's a little bit of a arduous trimming process, but it still is very efficient. If you find that I'm going too fast, definitely adjust the settings on your YouTube channel to 0.75 or 0.5 by pushing on the gear in the lower right corner of your screen, and that'll slow me down to a more doable speed. Okay, the next piece of paper A, this is the dark brown again, is trimmed at 9.5 and 4 3/4. Now if you want, you can stack up the two pieces we just created that are the same and trim them together at 10.5 and 5 1/4. Gather up the panels, and all the panels will be positioned in the book vertically, so if you want to do that, you certainly can. They're almost square, but one end is a little longer than the other. Those go in pocket B, and these other three little pieces are scraps that I'll set aside. We're moving on to the next page in our instructions, page 2, where we will trim the next two sheets at the same time, and in this case there's an arrow on the diagram indicating that the grain of the paper should dip easily from top to bottom. So I will just check my grain direction. That's very stiff. This is very flexible, so that's the direction it should go into the trimmer. We'll cut at 11 and 5 1/2. Now rotate this piece so it's horizontal, and we're going to give you a really weird measurement to trim. I would like you to cut at 10 1/8. Now 10 is here, 1/8 is going to be halfway between 10 and 10 1/4. You'll find 10 1/8. This will become an inside page in your book, 2 of them actually, so I'll put that on my pile to be scored. And then the next strip, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to trim at 10 1/8, set aside to be scored, and then the remaining pieces are scraps. Now I'll take paper C and D, that's going to be the brick color in my choice, so and making sure it dips easily top to bottom. And then here's the next color again, top to bottom. Easy cuts here. We'll trim at 9 1/2 and 4 3/4. These become folios on the inside of our book, and they need to be scored. So I'll set them aside, and this long narrow strip is scrap. Next, I'll take just one sheet of paper C. That's going to be the brick again, and it's not super critical, but ideally your paper should dip easily left to right. And I'll trim at 11 1/4, 8 1/4, and 3 1/2. Rotate the 3 1/2 and cut at 6. These pieces will become pockets in your album. Then the next strip will trim horizontally at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. I'll place these vertically into pocket B and take the next long strip. There are a couple of scraps there. We'll trim this one horizontally at 9 and 4 1/2. The two pieces that are the same will go in pocket C, and now I'll gather up, there should be, I believe, a total of 3 smaller scraps to set aside. Paper D, now I'm introducing blue here, or it could have been green to match the other paper D, but it's entirely up to you. We'll trim this at 9 and 4 3/4. Rotate, cut at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. Stack up the two pieces vertically. If you can kind of see that, they go in pocket B. And the next strip, here's a little scrap. This one we trim at 10 and 5. These pieces go in pocket D. And there's a little scrap there that came off the end. Finally, we'll go at 9 and 4 1/2. These will go in pocket C, and once again a little square scrap. Okay, we've made it through page 2, now off to page 3, just 4 more papers to trim. These are the prints. You're all warmed up right now. That's why I saved the prints for last. Okay, let's trim at 11 and a half, 8 and a quarter, and 5. Now rotate and cut at 11 and 5 and a half. Okay, so these panels will go in pocket A, and the next 2 strips should be the same size. We'll trim horizontally at 9 and 4 and a half. And these will go in pocket C. What's nice about this particular print is that it's rotated anyway, and it will still be somewhat right side up. All of the art elements are rotated. These are the scraps that will go in the scrap pile, and I'll grab the other paper E. If this paper, for this particular step, it's just really great if you can have a paper that can be turned in any direction, since some of the pieces will be used sideways and others will be used vertically. All right, we'll trim at 9 and a half and 4 3/4. Gather up the 2 that are the same, trim horizontally at 10 and a half and 5 1/4. Stack these up and they go in pocket B, and there's a couple of scraps there. This last strip we'll cut at 8 and a half and 4 1/4. These 2 pieces go in pocket D, and you have a couple more scraps. Now a print. I'm going to put this in my trimmer so it's right side up, and we'll cut at 9 and 4 1/2. Stack, and we'll trim horizontally at 10 and 5. Stack these up and they go in pocket C. You have some scraps and then a larger scrap that you can use to decorate your book. One more print. This one I'm going to put into the trimmer sideways, and it even says in the diagram, top of print. So I realize that we're all going to be using different prints, but I think it'd be best if the top of the print points this way. So here, this is the top if I were to position it correctly. So you're just going to rotate counterclockwise 1 turn, and we'll trim at 10 and a half and 5 1/2. Now this can be a little tricky, so just follow carefully with me. Our first cut is at 10 and a half, then 5 1/2, and 5. Now what that does, it gives me a cover for the back of the book, the cover for the spine, and the cover for the front of the book. And so that's why I trimmed it the way I did. I'm just really trying to plan ahead for you why I wanted the paper positioned the way it was when we trimmed it. And that way, if you have a scene of some kind, like I did here, that it will carry its way across the entire back cover, which I think is fabulous. Okay, all of this goes in pocket A, and there should be like a smaller scrap down here that's not used. Next, I want you to trim this piece at 9 and 4 1/2. Take 2 of these pieces and go in pocket B, and another scrap for later, and this strip is not used. That's probably the more scraps than I typically have in a situation, but we'll be all right. Now remember, I'd mentioned the folding board. We have one more cut to make. You can actually get 2 books out of the folding board, and honestly, this is where I started. Like if I cut a piece of folding board in half at 6 inches, what size would my book need to be? That was the foundation. Then everything else came after that. The sizes of the pages being 5 3/4 by 10 1/8. All of that was a result of this being my foundation. Check your grain direction on that folding board. This is really important. This is extremely difficult to push inward. This is easier. And I mean, it's not easy, but it's easier, okay? So make sure your folding board dips easily from top to bottom. That's super important. And just simply cut it 6 inches, and then you'll have everything you need for not 1, but 2 books. I'll set this one aside. We're not using it for this book. and we'll just put this one on our pile to be scored. Now I'm not going to trim these cut aparts. Those are included in all of your page kits, but we'll save that for later when we decorate, and I'll show you the finished outcome of the book. For now, I'm going to swap my trimmer for a score pal. I have this big stack of things that need to be scored. I'm going to work my way backwards through the pile, so from top to bottom. So the first thing on my pile to be scored is the folding board, and I have a really good tip for you because folding board is so stiff and heavy, it's very difficult to score. Grab one of Club Scrap's grid rulers. It really doesn't matter what size. This is the 2x8. I'm going to place it vertically on the score pal and put the paper in it horizontally, or the folding board, and I'm going to find 5.5. So this is my notch for 5.5. What I want to do is place the ruler right next to my scoring tool. In this case, I'm using a round tip stylus. And the ruler is going to help me make sure that my tool stays in the lane and doesn't go veering out of its lane. Okay, I want a nice sturdy score line. You notice I passed through about 3 or 4 times. Then I'm going to move the ruler. So here's my stylus now at home at 6.5. Put the ruler right up against it and pull back while pushing down firmly. And 3 or 4 passes, we're going to have a nice score line. This is the foundation of our book cover. We can set that aside. Next, we have these 2 pieces that are 3.5 by 6. These will become pockets, so we need to score to make flaps. And I'm going to first begin by placing the paper vertically and scoring at 2 3/4. Then rotate so it's horizontal, and we'll score at 3/4. However you can do it so you're comfortable, and 5 1/4. Repeat. So it's vertically at 2 3/4, then horizontally at 3/4, and 5 1/4. So that creates a U shape for our pocket. Another thing that you can do is take scissors and cut from the edge of the paper just to the left of the score line to the intersecting corner here. And then from the side, do the same thing. So we're removing the corner. Your orientation of the paper should be that the score lines are forming a U shape. Now we're working on the lower corner here, and I'll do the same on the other side. So I'm removing the score line itself and the entire corner. I'm going to repeat that for the second pocket paper so that work is done and we don't have to worry about doing it later. You can now file these pieces in pocket D. The pocket goes in the pocket. Okay, next we have these 4 papers that are all the same size. They should be in 2 different colors. They're 12 inches long. These are going to become the little fold outs in the middle of our book. So we'll score horizontally at 3.5 and 8 3/4. Once again, that's 3.5, 8 3/4. Do that for the remaining 2. Okay, all of this can go in pocket C. It's a little long for the pocket itself, so just put it in on its side like that. Now we have 4 sheets of paper that are 5.5 by 10 1/8. So we'll score horizontally at 5 and 5 1/8. That's going to make the tiniest little spine that ever lived. 5, 5 1/8, 5, 5 1/8, 5, 5 1/8. These are going to be placed in pocket B, and those are the inside pages of your member album, member book, whatever. That's all the paper we need to score. So now we're moving on to the assembly and installation. So I'll set this aside and we'll get going. The beauty of this project is that you need very few supplies. What you do need a lot of is adhesive. You can use bookbinding glue, certainly. I find it goes a little bit faster with my ATG. We do carry these at Club Scrap. A lot of other vendors in this industry carry something like this. And I really recommend having, if you are prolific or want to be, this adhesive is a must. Okay, so next, I took the contents out of pocket A while I was talking. I'm not sure if I said that or not. And now I have the cover that I've also prepared with my score lines. Now what I want you to do is find the score line on the cover that has the bump on it. And like every rule has its exception. Normally I say bury the bump. In this case, we're going to bury the crease. So I before E, except after C. I always bury the bump unless it's folding board. Then we go the other direction. And I've just found that that's the best way for the paper to perform. Now what you'll need at this point is a piece of ribbon about a yard in length. And I like to just double check the ribbon's grain direction. This ribbon's going to be wrapping around the book and I want to make sure the ribbon kind of wants to go inward. So if you hold it by the end and study the ends of the ribbon, I'm not sure if you can see this, but they're turning inward. So if I flip this around, it flips out like a bob. This way I want it in, and that's how I want my ribbon. So temporarily just find the center of your ribbon. So there's the ends all lined up. Here's my center. There's the center of my book. So I want the center of the ribbon to be kind of at the center of my spine of the book, or of this 6 by 12. That's about right. It looks pretty good top to bottom. I'm just eyeballing this. I could measure. And all I'm going to do is just add a little bit of adhesive to hold this ribbon in place, because we want the ribbon to be sandwiched between all these beautiful layers of paper, just like it is on my original sample here. Okay, then from your stack of prepared panels, I want you to find the darkest color. So in my case, that's brown. Yours will probably be a different color. And if you want, like I said, you may use bookbinding glue. I've got mine in a needle tip applicator. So if you're going to go this route, you need to go around the perimeter and then fill in somewhat in the middle. And I want you to center this piece onto the folding board within the scored area. So this is scored area number 1. This ends up being the front cover. And then you should have another piece that will fit here. So I will go ahead and use my bookbinding glue. Again, this is the most economical glue for this album, simply because we will be using a lot of adhesive with all these beautiful layers. The fastest way is with the ATG, or the adhesive transfer gun. Now there should be a narrow strip that came out of pocket A, so I will put some adhesive on that and center it within the spine area. Now, you have some prints. Find the print that has the tiny strip associated with it, and we'll see if we can reassemble that so that it all matches. I think we have to switch. Yes. Okay. So remember what I said when we were trimming the paper for the outside cover, that it was designed to complete the scene if it's a print, and that's what happens here. So I will apply adhesive to this and the spine and the back cover. And that's the front cover, all ready for embellishing for later. For now, I'm going to flip this over now to the inside. So we're looking at the inside of the book, and still we're working with everything that came in pocket A. So all these panels are designed to look their best on this book cover. So I'm going to center this again in the scored area. And then I'll center this within the spine area, this on the right. And then you should have 2 more prints that you can then layer onto these back, front and back inside covers. So go ahead and adhere all of those. Very pleased with how this is looking, and I could have gone either way on the print, but I decided that the travel map would be nice for the exterior. It would immediately say this is a travel book. And at this point, if you would like, you can go ahead and make some gentle creases to start forming an actual book shape. I thought sometimes it's easier just to have that done now rather than when pages are installed. Speaking of pages, let's empty the contents of pocket B, and we are now moving along in your instructions to page 5, page installation, pocket B. So everything's sort of cross-referenced there, and I have it all in chunks so that everything will hopefully make sense to you. I do think it's probably, you know, it's optional, the order of assembly, but I think installing the pages sort of gets your bearings going for the book structure. On this scored paper, you have the bumps with the score lines, and I'm going to go ahead and fold on those bumps. Now this will create a very tiny spine. It sounds funny to even say it. And it can be a little difficult to kind of get those creases nice and straight. A really good helper for this job might be a grid ruler, because a grid ruler is 1/8 of an inch thick Our spine is 1/8 of an inch wide. So if you want to help just make nice creases, you can press this onto the edge of one of our grid rulers of any size, and that will help formulate a nice crisp fold for your spine. Now we're going to install this page into the book. So here is the front, and then this is the spine area that has the covering on it. This is going to be placed centered top to bottom and kind of along the left edge of this spine piece. Now you can see that it's already pretty convenient. If I wanted to, I'll show you 2 ways to install the pages, whatever makes you feel most comfortable. If you want to leave the ruler in place, I'm using my bookbinding glue, my #1 recommend for this job, and running it along that 1/8 inch spine. Then I will place it kind of just near the edge of that spine panel that you added, the dark paper panel, centered top to bottom. And I'm just pressing down on the glued area and giving it a second. It doesn't take a super long time, and at some point you can sort of check to make sure glue isn't oozing out all over the place. If you use just a decent amount, not overly, you won't have any problems with excess glue. Just enough to kind of hold that little 1/8 inch section in place. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for the next piece. So I really need to get a nice crisp fold on those score lines by burying those bumps. I'm also going to use my ruler to help me make that 1/8 inch spine look even better. Isn't that a great trick? I love that. Now, you could put adhesive here, or since you sort of know where this is going to go, you could add it directly to the paper. And I've tried it both ways, and I have found them, maybe this is my preference. I can just add a nice stream of glue here. Then I can take my page and give a little bit of space between this one and the previous page, just a little, like a 1/16 of an inch, which is 1/2 of an 1/8. You don't want a whole 1/8 of an inch. You got 4 pages in here and only 3/4 of an inch to work with. So just a little bit of space will allow each page to fit in here perfectly. Once again, I'm giving it a second. And what's nice about using a wet glue here is if the page was installed or something fumbled or went wrong, you can straighten things out before the glue cures. But let me assure you, once the glue is cured, nothing's going anywhere. It really does a nice job. And I love how this it's coming together so nice. Okay, we got to do this 2 more times. So you can make your creases, make your spine, and install with your preferred gluing method. If you want, just try it both ways, or make another book and try it the other way. Totally up to you. That was the last page I had to install, and you can see again, it nearly reached the very outer edge of this spine. So the 4 pages within a 3/4 inch piece of paper, boy, that's just nearly perfect, isn't it? Oh, I think this is one of the best turning albums I've done. Now, granted, this is my 4th. I made a prototype, I made my first sample, I made my second sample, and I'm making this album with you. Now remember that paper A color that we had? It's the one that has the, it's the darkest color. In my case, it's always going to be brown. And then there should be, that should fit. You should have one of them in Pocket B that fits right here on the outside. And then the print that you didn't have on this side can be here. And we'll repeat that installation. So another brown panel here on the back of the back page with a nesting buddy. Okay, so you again can use the adhesive of your choice, either a dry ATG or the economical but maybe slightly more time consuming bookbinding glue. The adhesion of the bookbinding glue allows for a little bit of correction if, let's say, you don't get it centered properly, whereas the dry glue dries instantly, but it doesn't allow you to make adjustments once it makes contact. Next, we have all of these remaining panels, and they're all the same exact size. These are designed to cover every panel on the inside of your pages except for one in each set. So go with me. This is a single page, right, that you installed all at once. This is the first panel, second, third, 4th. So these are sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can put a decorative panel on every single side except for side 3 in each set. Okay, here's 1, 2, don't put anything there. If you wanted to, you could say 1, 2, X, 4. 1, 2, X, 4. 1, 2. Anytime there's a 3, you X it out. And then 1, 2, not there, and that one's done. So I'll show you how I apply the dry adhesive to these panels. And you can just, again, choose whatever color you want. I try to maybe add a plain on panel 2. So we'll do that. And you can see I simply put adhesive around the perimeter. This is panel 3, nothing. And then maybe I'll put a print here. So I just go around the edge, 2, 3, 4. I prioritize the perimeter and the corners. So I'll put a solid opposite the plane. Oh, that looks really pretty. I'm glad I added the blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to get this particular kit, it's the National Parks Remix. This is actually the second remix we've done with this collection. Maybe I'll do brown here. 1. And just continue on until all of these pages have a panel. Now, do you see what I mean about efficient? I know that I will be editing out some of the repetitive tasks or fast forwarding through them, but to get to this point of this particular album, including all of the trimming and installing everything so far, I have 38 minutes and 20 seconds of live footage. So I started the camera when I made my introduction. I just kept it rolling even when I screwed up and I had to go back. So that's pretty efficient. That's why I'm calling this the member album. The most efficient mini book ever released. Now I'm emptying everything from pocket C. That section is in the middle of page 5 in your instructions, and this is called folio installation. So we'll begin with our larger pieces. These are scored, so we'll fold to bury the bump, which is the rule of thumb here. You know what, a little time-saving tip. If you want, you can round the corners of your pages here on either setting on a corner chomper. Now, in the last one I did a 1/4 inch round, so I'm going to leave these papers open, stack them 2 at a time, and this time I think I'm going to round on the 1/4 inch setting just to kind of see how that looks. So again, if you want, you can use a corner rounder punch, you can use a corner chomper like I am, or you can skip this altogether. It's your own member album. Okay, so here we have a bump. I'll just bury all these bumps and finger crease them to start. And I'm going to put them on a stack. I hope you'll have a bone folder. If you don't have them, an actual bone folder that isn't made of plastic, pick one up. We do carry them at Club Scrap because it's kind of an important thing. Notice I have the papers stacked, and I'm just going to burnish once on each side. And that way I save a ton of burnishing time because it's all about efficiency. Okay, now each of these folios can be decorated with a number of things. We have 3 sets of panels. One set will go on the inside of each folio. One set will go on the bottom flap and one on the top flap. Now here's something important to remember. If you put them all in a row, you'll notice that there's a wide flap and a skinny flap. So if you have them incorrectly positioned, one will be longer than the other. I want to make sure the longer flap is at the top, and all of mine were switched. You'll find, here's the secret. You're going to have these panels that are printed. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Did I have them right or not? That fits. Make sure the printed panel fits on the top flap. And it does. Then I'm going to figure out my orientation that I want for these panels. And just pick one of your favorite. Let's stack them all up. And since we rounded the flaps of the folio, we have to round only 2 corners of the panel. Don't round all 4. And then we can go ahead and adhere them. Okay, now the reason we decorated the tops first, I want to make sure the colors alternate properly, but we can go ahead and just round only 2 corners. Remember the 1/4 inch setting. Just distribute these. So we need the rust color with the green, and then we can also make sure our rounded corners are facing up. Then we alternate here with some blue, or that would have been green. Either way, it looks really fabulous. So go ahead, if you want, you can then nest the contrasting panel onto the small flap of the folio. Finally, you can open up each folio now that we know that the print will be on top, and just make sure the orientation of the print that you add to the inside of each folio is positioned in the same direction. And now we have 4 beautiful folios to add to our book. These are going to live on the sacred third flap, or page, side rather, of each page. And you can decide what colors you want to be featured. I think I'm going to go with the green here. So then on the back of the folio, I'll just make sure I have a nice coat of adhesive. And maybe on this next one, I'll use the liquid. Just watch your orientation. Make sure the large flap with the print is on the top so that the print on the inside is facing in the proper orientation. And here again is another page 3. So I will add the brick version, this time with glue. Try to keep the top on my needle tip glue applicator, and when I'm not using it, here's a clever trick for you. I use tape quite a bit, so it just fits right in the back of a office style tape dispenser. There, that tip was free. All right, now pocket D, there's just a few items that remain. This is fun. So remember we made the pocket earlier. Bury the bumps of those scores. Bring the side flaps in first and the bottom flap last. It's a really important order for when you make a pocket where something has to slide in. If you bring the bottom up first, the item you slide into the pocket will tend to catch on this bottom flap. But if you fold the sides in first, that's going to be a better bet. Next, we're going to do something fun with the envelope punch board. I don't have these in stock, but I'm sure you can find them from maybe your local scrapbook store. This is 6 inches long, so if I place the fully opened piece into my envelope punch board so that it's in a U shape with the score lines, the edge of the paper should be at 3. And that's going to put a notch right in the middle. And I'm going to repeat that for the second piece at 3. Then these are the little liners for the pockets. These are going to decorate that, so we should notch these as well. 2 1/8 for each of these punches, 2 1/8. And now, if you want, you can nest these decorative panels onto the front of your pockets. Now you don't have to install these pockets where I did. You can install them on any page. If you wanted to put it on this page here, it should fit. But I have this plan to be on the outside. So again, side panels go in first. I'll add a little glue there and there to kind of tack that down. And then apply glue to the U-shaped tab area. Remember, bottom flap goes up last. And center that left to right and match the margin on the bottom. So it shouldn't rest right on the bottom. It should be sort of, I think, about 1/4 inch up. Then turn to the far back page of the book. I'm going to do the same thing. Next, we have 2 more pieces of paper in pocket D. Better close the lid on this. We don't want dried glue in our needle tip applicator, and I'm going to round just the upper 2 corners. That way, you could even staple some ribbon on there, and look, it fits. And slides right in there like it should. That's beautiful. Now your book is ready for embellishing. Enter the cut-aparts, which you will trim, and all of these wonderful scraps. So you can get a lot of use out of these panels. I kind of separate even the widest ones, turn them into photo mats. Like this one could be a photo mat, and I even trimmed it and nested it onto one of the larger pieces. I mean, it's amazing how much can happen with these. Then with the cut-aparts, you can like pick artwork. The first artwork you pick should be for the front cover. So maybe of all the paths you take in life, make sure a few of them are dirt. If I chose this for my front cover, I would trim that out and then maybe even mat it with a contrasting color and use a strip maybe to help anchor that. And then maybe you could use one of these beautiful metal leaves on the front cover. Choose your embellishing and your decorative elements for the front cover first. In my opinion, that's the most important part of your decorating process. Is just kind of a nice looking front cover. And then use all the rest to fill in the inside. I'm going to revisit my previous samples. Again, this is the second version of the book that I've made. So I did choose this first and it just fit beautifully there. There was a journaling prompt, so I stapled ribbon to the top of it and just put it right into the pocket. Here there was a cut-apart that I was able to cut and frame. Just remember to keep your corner chomper handy for decorative potential there. And then, this is just kind of as it was, but here you can see I just incorporated scraps, journaling prompts, other elements, border strips, trim them down. And the most valuable tool during this process will be your 8x8 grid ruler. So here, if I could just hover it over the dark orange, I knew this strip had to be 5 1/4. I just did a lot of measuring to double check I knew what size. Here's an example too of one of the scraps used with one of the plain papers to make a little photo mat where I even added ribbon, more photo space there. And then a scrap fit right in there. There were so many things I was able to do. Long strips of long titles, you can trim the words apart. Look at how nice that turned out. I kept going with this method. Loved that with the folios. I did that here. I just didn't do it here. And then again, the back, you have 2 sides there for pictures, a tag in the pocket for journaling. This was completely pieced out. And I think I used every single cut apart there. And again, on this one with photos added, you can see here I have one on the front and another photo on the back. So these little albums provide so much real estate for tons and tons of pictures. But if you don't have a lot of pictures, the cut-aparts will really give you an alternative decorative element as well. This is my food page. We had so much fun on that cold, rainy day. Happiness is here and now. That was on a long strip that I took apart. And again, this has 2 sides. What a great little book. Totally efficient. My complete film time from start to finish without any fast forwarding was 53 minutes and 33 seconds. And that's why this is the most efficient mini book ever released. I hope you enjoy making yours. I sure did love making mine. I can't wait to finish it and decorate it and add pictures. Please remember to follow us on Club Scrap's Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, and join our private Club Scrap chat group where you can share your finished member album. I can't wait to see it. See you next time.